There is a mother in Manchester named Sarah. Every afternoon looks like every other afternoon. Her son, Leo, 2.5, has just tipped an entire pot of yogurt onto the living room carpet. This is the third time today. This morning, he ripped the pages out of her favorite book. At lunch, he threw his spoon onto the floor and watched it fall as if it were the most important experiment in the world. This afternoon, yogurt on the carpet. Sarah sits down, puts her head in her hands, and whispers a sentence that nearly every parent on earth has whispered at some point. Why is my CHU0069LD so badly behaved? Here is what the Neuroscience says. Nothing is wrong with Leo. Everything is wrong with the question. Welcome to the Nordic method. I am your host. Today, we are talking about 5 behaviors that most parents label as bad: destroying things, throwing objects, asking why without end, refusing to share, and meltdowns over things that seem utterly trivial. The developmental psychologist Alison Gopnik at UC Berkeley has spent 4 decades studying the minds of young children. Her conclusion flips the way we see U0069LD behavior entirely. She writes, "Children are not defective adults. They are a completely different form of consciousness, optimized for learning, not for executing." In other words, Leo's brain was not designed to behave well. It was designed to explore. Behavior number 1, destroying everything. He rips books. He breaks toys. He knocks over the tower of blocks you spent 15 minutes building. Your first reflex is, he is being destructive. But here is what is actually happening inside his skull. Professor Laura Schultz at MIT runs a laboratory called the Early Childhood Cognition Lab. She and her colleagues have spent years studying how young children explore the world. Their findings will make you see a torn book through entirely different eyes. Children do not destroy objects because they want to ruin things. They destroy objects because they are running an algorithm. The brain of a 2-year-old is a constantly operating causal inference machine. When he tears a page, he is not thinking, "I am going to ruin Mummy's book." He is thinking, "If I apply force in this direction, how does this material respond? Does it make a sound? Does it change shape? Is the result the same as last time?" Every time he breaks something, he is collecting data. Data about physics, data about materials, or data about your reaction. This is not destruction. This is the scientific method with 2-year-old hands. Schultz's team demonstrated this with a famous experiment. They gave young children a toy with multiple hidden functions. The children did not sit still and wait for instructions. They immediately began experimenting, banging, shaking, throwing, twisting, until they had discovered every function. This is the behavior of a scientist, not a vandal. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, will not be fully developed until the age of 25. But the brain regions responsible for exploration and learning are running at full capacity from the age of 2. A child's brain is optimized for gathering information, not for restraining behavior. This is not a bug. This is a feature. Behavior number 2, asking why without end. You know that moment. You have just answered the 7th why question. Your child looks at you, BS, and asks, why? One more time, you feel yourself beginning to unravel. But research from the University of Michigan shows that preschool children ask an average of 76 information-seeking questions per hour at home. 76 questions per hour. Not because they want to annoy you, because their brain has detected a gap in its database and is trying to fill it. Dr. Michelle Chouinard spent years analyzing children's questions in natural settings. She found that when children ask a question and receive an unsatisfactory answer, they ask again, not because they did not hear, because their brain evaluated your answer and determined that it did not close the knowledge gap. This is critical thinking in its rawest form. Alison Gopnik calls young children the research and development division of the human species. Adults are production and marketing. We execute, we plan, we focus, but children explore. We tend to think children cannot focus because their brains are immature. But Gopnik argues that children's distractibility is not a flaw, it is a different evolutionary strategy. The adult brain is like a spotlight, focused, directed at a single point, ignoring everything around it. The child's brain is like a lantern, light spilling out in all directions, taking in everything at once. A spotlight is better for completing tasks. A lantern is better for learning. When your child asks why for the 47th time, they are shining their lantern into a dark corner of the world that you stopped seeing long ago. Here is the critical part. When you answer a child's question, the brain regions associated with learning and memory light up on an fMRI scan. When you dismiss the question, the brain regions associated with stress and anxiety light up. Every time you answer why, you are building neural pathways for critical thinking. Every time you say stop asking, you are building pathways for cognitive inhibition. Behavior number 3, saying no to everything. There is a phase in Chat U0069LD development where the word no becomes the most used word in the child's vocabulary. You ask him to put on his coat. No. You ask him to have a bath. No. You offer him his favorite dinner. No. Parents in most Western cultures call this the rebellious phase. The Swedes have a word for it, jag-utveckling. It means the development of the self. They do not see it as rebellion. They see it as the emergence of a person. Here is what is happening in the brain. The prefrontal cortex is beginning to form the connections that allow a Chat U0069LD to understand that he is a separate entity from his mother. This is an enormous developmental milestone. Before this phase, a child does not clearly distinguish between self and other. But around 18 to 24 months, something shifts. The child begins to understand, I have my own will, I have my own desires, and I can express them. The word no is the simplest tool the child has to practice this new boundary. It is not defiance, it is ego practice. Dr. Michael Tomasello at the Max Planck Institute has spent decades researching children's social development. His research shows that children begin to understand themselves as intentional agents, beings with their own goals and desires, at around 9 to 12 months of age. But they do not have the linguistic tools to express this until they have words. And the first word, the most important word for expressing will, is no. When a 2-year-old says no, they are not rejecting you. They are declaring, I am a separate person and I have the right to choose. Behavior number 4, refusing to share. Another CH, U0069LD approaches his toy. He snatches it back. He shouts, mine. You feel embarrassed. You feel like you are raising a selfish CH, U0069LD. But here is what the science says. Children under the age of 4 have not yet developed what psychologists call theory of mind. This is the ability to understand that other people have thoughts, feelings, and desires that are different from one's own. Without this ability, sharing is not merely difficult, it is cognitively meaningless. To a 2-year-old, the toy in his hand is part of himself. Asking him to give it to someone else is like asking you to hand your mobile phone to a stranger on the tube. You would not do that, and you have a fully developed prefrontal cortex and a complete theory of mind. Research from Harvard University shows that children do not begin to understand sharing as a social concept until around 3 to 4 years of age. And even then, they share only when the social environment makes it meaningful to them, not because they have suddenly become generous. The brain of a 2-year-old simply does not yet have the neural circuitry for complex empathy. The temporoparietal junction, the brain region responsible for distinguishing self from other, is still in its foundational construction phase. Your child is not selfish. Your child is in a normal and healthy stage of development for an incomplete brain. Behavior number 5, meltdowns over tiny things. Leo sobs for 15 minutes because his biscuit broke in half. Do what you think? This is a completely irrational reaction, and you are right. It is irrational, but not because he is manipulating you, because his amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, is structurally mature from very early on, whilst his prefrontal cortex, the regulation center, will not be fully online for another 2 decades. Picture a car with an accelerator running at full power and brakes that have not yet been installed. That is the brain of a 2-year-old. The amygdala responds to threats and stress. When the biscuit breaks, the child's brain does not process it as a minor inconvenience. It processes it as a disruption of the cosmic order. To a brain that has not yet developed the ability to place things in perspective, every disappointment is total. On top of this, children under 3 have cortisol levels, the stress hormone, that spike faster than adults and take longer to return to baseline. They do not just feel things more intensely. They stay trapped in that feeling for longer. Research from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden has shown that children raised in environments where their emotions are acknowledged rather than suppressed develop significantly better emotional regulation by school age. Not because they were indulged, because their nervous systems learned that emotions are not dangerous, that feelings come and go, that the storm will pass. Here is the most important thing you need to take away. These 5 behaviors: destroying objects, asking why endlessly, saying no to everything, refusing to share, and melting down over tiny things, are not 5 problems to fix. They are 5 developmental indicators. They are evidence that your child's brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Destroying things is science. Asking why is critical thinking. Saying no is the emergence of self. Refusing to share is incomplete theory of mind. And meltdowns are an amygdala operating without prefrontal brakes. This is not a badly behaved child. This is a child under construction. The hardest part of parenting is not managing behavior. It is changing how you see that behavior. When you see destruction, you punish. When you see science, you get curious. When you see rebellion, you control. When you see the emergence of self, you respect. Next time your child does something the world labels as bad, pause for 3 seconds and ask yourself, is this bad behavior or is this evidence that my child's brain is developing exactly as it should? The answer, in the vast majority of cases, will be the second one. Back to Sarah and Leo. That evening, after the yogurt had been cleaned up and Leo was asleep, Sarah sat down and opened an article about Alison Gopnik's research. She read about lanterns and spotlights. She read about brains optimized for learning. And the next morning, when Leo started tearing a magazine again, Sarah almost said, "Stop destroying things." But she paused. She sat down next to her son, and she asked, "What are you discovering?" Leo looked at his mom, then at the magazine, then back at his mom. He did not answer. But there was a moment of connection there. A moment where Sarah no longer saw a badly behaved Shay U0069LD. She saw a 2.5-year-old scientist trying to understand the world with the only tool he had, his hands. This does not mean you let your Che U0069LD do whatever they want. No, this is not permissive parenting. Leo still does not get to tear the magazine. This is neuroscience. This is a shift in how you see. You still set boundaries. You still keep them safe, but you no longer see your CHU0069LD as the enemy. You see your CHU0069LD as a brain under construction, and you are the architect, not the warden. If you want to understand what is actually happening inside your child's brain, rather than just managing behavior, subscribe to this channel. Now, we release new neuroscience-based parenting videos every week. So, of these 5 behaviors, destroying things, asking why endlessly, saying no to everything, refusing to share, or melting down over tiny things, which one surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one in the first 24 hours.